Inward to Gethsemane is the latest full-length album from Vastum. I think it's album number 5 at this point, and they really should be doing amazing things at this point with so many albums under their belt, and I think they still are. The core appeal of what they've been doing since 2009 is still right there, and that's a form of old school death metal, which is, well, old school death metal influenced music, which is increasingly atmospheric and it still has all of those, well, riffs. It still has riffs, and that's the important thing. Um, my big, I think most people really connected with this band when their original guitarist was still in there, Kyle House, who is a member of Acephalix and is now in other bands. Uh, they put out Patricidal Lust, and that was their second album. They sort of figured it out at that point, and that was their real impact that got them noticed. And in many ways, this record reflects what I think is distant from that album as the band should be after 10 years in terms of showing atmospheric progression far beyond what they were doing back in the day, but still carrying the Incantation, Morbid Angel, and Autopsy influences that you really want from this band. And uh, as the two guitarists, Leela Abdul Ralph and Shelby Lermo worked really well together on these last several albums in terms of incorporating those old school death metal influences and still working a couple of wild leads and feeling relevant to the canon of death metal that a lot of fans wanted, but finding their own weird ways to twist it around. And of course, that comes with their style of lyricism here and whatnot and the imagery. But for me, it's all about the riffs, and so we'll get to a song here to at least prove that there are big riffs all over this record. So I guess I was sort of in the minority, is where I wasn't tired of Vastum when Our Official Purge came out. I actually thought it was one of their best records to date because I feel like each record they put out, they've done something different with that same sound, but they haven't really moved the needle that deeply over the last three. So Hole Below was actually kind of a conservative shift, probably because of the switch of guitarists, and then sort of in keeping with their sound. And I found that each record got more comfortable with what it was doing. Now, why do I like the sound of this band? I'm a huge fan of Disincarnate by Loudplast, and I think there's some both lyrical and surrealistic influences going into that band early on that also feed into what Vastum are doing, whether it's the psychosexual or religious imagery that comes from the lyrics or the style of death metal they're playing and some of those core influences in terms of how the riffs are built. So the important thing with this record is that it's still recognizably Vastum. And I think there are more vocal layers in general. There are more inclusion in terms of both vocal styles and many vocal styles between the two vocalists. It's a big part of it. But the important thing is that there's still riffs, and that's the important part of like making the Vastum argument now. I think that the Lermo has left the band at this point, as far as I know. So it'll be interesting to see how they evolve beyond that point. I don't think it worked out all that well for Acephalix, but for this band, it'll be interesting to see what they do next. Um, Otherwise, I could ramble on. I think that this is a Vastum record that will appeal to people who've would like to see all of their atmospheric elements enhanced, and that means the spoken word sections or the spoken parts are much more frequent. The sort of haunting register of that, the interplay between vocal styles is more intense overall, but we still get the sort of crawl of almost nearby death doom feeling of the record that is constantly in a sort of agonized state throughout. So it feels like still is an aggressive band, and they haven't lost their touch, but atmosphere is a big part of this record, and of course I enjoyed that. So for me, that's a high recommendation. Um, Overall, I think that For me, 8 out of 10 is not average. It's well above average. And every aspect of this record is above average. But where they really sing is in the extra details. The lyrics are pretty an intense read. I think that the theme of the record is very interesting in that it's not so obvious and probably never will be unless you were to ask about it. And the presentation of the whole thing is they've sort of perfected like what a Vastum record looks like and sounds like at this point, and this should feel very familiar to anyone who might have missed the last record but really liked Hole Below or Patricidal Lust. So check it out if that's your kind of thing. It is out today, and go ahead and read my review if you'd like more of my thoughts in depth.